Welcome all the listeners. We are discussing Gandhi, the man and his times, MGP 001. In the last lectures, we have discussed the first 4 units of MGP 001. In this lecture, we are going to discuss another 4 units. Unit number 5, Gandhi in South Africa. Then the unit 6 is Return of Gandhi when he comes back to India. Then unit 7 will be Khilafat movement and also non-cooperation movement. And unit 8 will be civil disobedience movement. So basically what we will be discussing in this lecture is Gandhi's stay and his struggles in South Africa. Then he comes back to India, and this is where he becomes a very, very popular leader of the masses. So these 4 units will be discussed in today's lecture. So to begin with Gandhi's struggles in South Africa. So it is well known to the world that Gandhi, the Gandhi that we know, that reality of Gandhi came out during his stay in South Africa. Because Gandhi's struggle in South Africa, it gave India and the world one of the greatest leaders of 20th century. It was, one can say that initially Gandhi's Karma Bhumi was South Africa, because he had gone to South Africa to fight for the rights of Indians, because South Africa was part of the British Empire back then, and Indians were taken as indentured labor by the British. The British Empire, at that time was quite big. Their colonies were spread all over the world. And there was a famous saying at that time that the sun never used to set in the British Empire. What it used to mean is that there would always, this empire was so big that somewhere around the world there would be always sun shining on the empire. So this was quite a big empire, and India's human resource was always sought after. Indians were taken by the British to other colonies as laborers. Indians were taken to South Africa. They were taken also to the Caribbean and even towards Southeast Asia in countries like Brunei, etc. So this is Gandhi's initial, this is why he went to South Africa. Then his stay in South Africa was between 1893 to 1914. This is where he transformed into a leader of masses, and this is where he gained mental and spiritual growth, right? So this was Gandhi's struggles led him to, what was Gandhi, the Gandhi that we know, he became that struggler, that spiritual leader, that Mahatma. His beginning was in South Africa. So he reached South Africa in 1893 to help an Indian businessman to resolve a lawsuit, right? So that Indian businessman had to fight a lawsuit against the British, and he sought help from Mahatma Gandhi. So he went there in 1893, and when he reached in 1893 in South Africa, he was appalled, he was shocked to see the reality of South Africa, because he experienced racial discrimination in a number of instances. And why there was racial discrimination against the Indians in South Africa, there are a number of reasons. The prominent reason is Indians were brought as indentured labor by the British in South Africa. So what used to happen is that Europeans were staying in South Africa, and they felt threatened with growing prosperity of some Indians. This is a very, very positive point of Indians. Whenever Indians go anywhere, even today, Indian diaspora is very, very famous. And there is one particular reason for this, that Indian diaspora is known for its hard work, right? So wherever they go, they mix with the locals and they work hard, and then they scale the ladders of prosperity. So this also happened during the British times in South Africa. So many Indians, they started to overtake the local businesses and activities that were taken care of by the Europeans. And Europeans felt a lot threatened by growing prosperity of the Indians. So being insecure of the Indians, they resorted to racial abuse. They would abuse the Indians racially. Then there were unjust laws by the government, and of course they would also use humiliation. They would try to humiliate the Indians so that their own security, that was a sign of their own insecurity. So this was the prevalent situation in South Africa at that time. Now what happens is that there is one very famous incident that took place at the railway station of Peter Maritzburg. Yeah, and during this incident, Mahatma Gandhi was thrown out of the railway coach despite the fact that he had a first class ticket. He was brutally thrown out of the station. And what happens after this is, even if you see, this is a plaque at this has been installed at the Peter Maritzburg railway station, and this plaque says that in the vicinity of this plaque, M.K. Gandhi was evicted from a first class compartment on the night of 7 June 1893. This incident changed the course of his life. He took up the fight against racial oppression. His active non-violence started from that date. So this incident changed Gandhi. And the whole night he was sitting on the station shivering in cold, and he was just thinking that what should I do? Should I surrender to the enemy, and should I be going back to India, or should I stay here and struggle for the right, not only for my rights, but also for the rights of my other Indians. So he made this decision that I will not go back to India, and I will stay here and struggle against the enemy. Another incident, Gandhi was made to sit on a railway coach floor. When he tried to resist, there was a violent physical assault by the conductor against Gandhi. So these incidents, these hardships, they formed his resolve, and they all ensured that Gandhi started to think of the ways to take on the oppressive rule of the British government in South Africa. And in yet another incident, it was Gandhi was beaten up by the policeman because he was walking out at night after 9 p.m. And in those times, if anybody had to walk after 9 p.m., there were special permits that were given to individuals. And one had to, if a policeman would ask for a permit after 9 p.m., so one has to show the permit. And if somebody doesn't have a permit, then he was assaulted, or they were even put behind the bars. So this also happened with Gandhi. But Gandhi was luckily saved by an English friend who was from the Quaker Society. And if you remember, in the last lecture, we have done what was the Quaker Society. Quaker Society was basically a society of individuals which used to believe in the philosophy of pacifism and non-violence. So basically, all the English, all the foreigners who were part of the Quaker Society, their views and views of Gandhi and Indians would match, because they would talk about non-violence and respect for individuals. So this is why Gandhi was saved by an English friend who was a part of the Quaker Society. Now, after all these incidents, Gandhi decided to stay in South Africa. He said that I will struggle for the rights of Indians. I will not meekly go and surrender to the oppressive rule of the British. I will stay here, and I will help my fellow Indians, because he had the knowledge of law. And law, in later years, he used his expertise in law to take on the British. Now, after all these experiences, he started to take the fight back to the British through law, and then he came on a visit to India. He came back to India in 1896 and what he did during this visit is that he wrote a green pamphlet. And this green pamphlet was basically, it was like a brochure, and there was a lot of information in this brochure citing poor condition of Indians in South Africa. So aim of Gandhiji by writing this green pamphlet was that he wanted to sensitize the Indians about what was happening to Indians in South Africa, because nobody knew about the plight of Indians in South Africa. Nobody had this idea that what was happening to Indians in South Africa. So the first aim of Gandhiji, it was to increase the awareness about Indians, about the plight of Indians in South Africa. And this is how he drafted this pamphlet, and he came and distributed this pamphlet to India. In India, he also met a number of editors of newspapers, magazines, and he was trying to raise the awareness through media also. And by the way, Gandhiji was very, very well versed in using media to raise awareness. He later on he goes on to have his own newspapers, and so he was very well aware that how media can be used to sensitize the people, and the role of media was very, very important for Gandhiji. So after that, he traveled extensively in India. He met a number of important leaders of Congress. He met as I informed earlier, he also met the people from press, and he also interacted with the locals, and he raised the awareness about problems of Indians in South Africa. So after this, when he goes back to South Africa, there was also a personal change in Gandhiji, and that personal change came in form of changes in his lifestyle. Because before all these incidents and before he had taken up all these issues, Gandhiji was more like he would his lifestyle was more like a Westerner. After all these experiences, he realizes the futility of affluence. Right, he came to know that there is no point of seeking affluence at a time when your fellow countrymen are being ill-treated. So he moved. So from here on, he moves towards simplicity. And this was the hallmark of Gandhiji, that a true leader is one who sets the true examples. And he set the example. He, from affluence, now he moves towards simplicity. And these after this, I mean, there are two examples: Phoenix Settlement and the Tolstoy Farm. These two were the examples of spiritual search for human growth and development. So basically, what Gandhi was trying to do is that he was trying to set this example that whatever you say, you should also practice this, right? And this is a very, very good example for all the people who want to be good leaders. So for them, the lesson is that if you say something, you should also practice that. So this is what Gandhiji started to do after coming back to South Africa. He changed his lifestyle, and he was not seeking affluence, but he would do the minimum, and he would always practice what he used to say. Another thing that happens after this is that it was for the first time in 1906 that first practical application of Satyagraha in South Africa starts. So so far the concept of Satyagraha was in Gandhi's mind, but in 1906 he starts a practical application of the concept. And how did he define Satyagraha? He said that Satyagraha is a force born out of truth, love and non-violence. So Satyagraha basically is asking for truth. What is truth, right? So you raise questions. So this is also a quest for gaining knowledge, right? So Gandhiji said that this is a force born out of truth, love and non-violence. And it is also vindication of truth by infliction of suffering, not on the opponent, but on oneself. That means, can you suffer for truth? This is the real test of a Satyagrahi. So basically, Satyagraha is what Gandhiji learned from this is that self-sacrifice as a weapon is to be, how can you use self-sacrifice as a weapon? So this is what Gandhiji was looking to, and this is, if you suffer, it further strengthens your resolve, and you do not, inflict the sufferings on the opponent, because then it leads to violence. So aim of Satyagraha is to avoid violence, and can you suffer yourself? This is what exactly is a test for a Satyagrahi. So all these methods were used by Gandhiji in South Africa, and what happened is that after mass mobilization of the people in South Africa, and even there were many from the British and Europeans who were very well aware of what Gandhiji was doing, and they supported activities of Gandhiji. And by the year 1914, Gandhi's struggle ensured that Indians get their dignity back by the year 1914. So suitable laws were passed by the British government, which and due to which racial discrimination came towards an end by the year 1914, as Indians were facing before the problem. So what came out of this Gandhi's stay in South Africa is that through his struggles, he was able to mobilize the masses, and he was able to use novel new weapons like Satyagraha and non-violence, to not only to make people aware of their rights, but also to put pressure on the British government and achieve his objectives. So then after this, Gandhi comes back to India. In Unit 6, you will read about return of Gandhi to India and how did he become a very, very popular leader in India. So Gandhi left South Africa at the age of 45, and he had no personal property. So because I told you that he had moved towards spirituality and seeking truth, so for him affluence was was not an aim of life. So he left the goal of affluence, he became very, very simple. And this is where he transforms into a Mahatma, because he was just a man, clad in a dhoti and just with a stick. And this was simplicity at its best. So Indian leaders, when Gandhi came back to India, Indian Congress leaders, they were aware of Gandhi and his work, the type of work that he had done in South Africa. But the people in India, the masses, were not very, very familiar with Gandhi's work, what Gandhi had done back in South Africa. So this was one of the issues that was facing Gandhi when he came back to India, that the masses were not very much aware of his work, but the Indian leaders very well knew what Gandhiji was doing. So he was very famous among the Congress leadership back in India. So when he comes back to India, his political mentor was Gopal Krishna Gokhale. And Gokhale advised him to tour India. He said that, you should mix with the masses. You should know what are the problems of the masses, because the best way for a leader is directly to connect with the masses. So in those days, of course, there were no mass media programs. The way we have instant connectivity today, it was not in those days. So the best thing that Gokhale advised Gandhiji was that you go and have a tour of India, connect with the people. But he gave him an advice. Gokhale said, keep your ears open but mouth shut. Don't speak too much with the people, listen to them. This is what will tell you that what are the problems of the people. And following on this advice, Gandhiji started, touring India, and he started to know people, and this is how his popularity starts to build up. There were a number of satyagrahas that, he had done before moving on towards the bigger movements like Khilafat movement and the non-cooperation movement, and later on the civil disobedience movement. But starting with the Champaran Satyagraha, the Champaran Satyagraha was, it took place between 1917 and 18. So the basic aim of this Satyagraha was to highlight the plight of indigo farmers, because they were facing a number of problems. So this problem was brought to the notice of Gandhiji. And what Gandhiji said is, he collected a number of teachers and Congress leaders, and he said that we will not do anything apart from collection of facts. We will have a word, we will interact with the farmers, indigo farmers. We have to collect the facts, because their story has to come out. So we will be collecting their stories, we will collect the facts, and we will be drafting reports. Right? So based on their facts, we will draft reports which will be submitted to the British government. There has to be no agitation at all. And this is how, Gandhiji starts, collecting facts with his team. And what happens is that, with the due course of time, this problem became a main, front page headline in the newspapers, and it was highlighted, the issue of, plight of the indigo farmers. Nobody knew about it, but by the efforts of Gandhiji, everybody came to know about it. The public opinion was mobilized, and the British relented, and they instituted the Champaran Agrarian Committee, and Gandhiji was made a member of it. And this is how, the end of, this also leads to the end of infamous Teen Kathiya tradition as well. So this was the power of Gandhiji, and the way his modus operandi was to bring out the facts, mobilize the people. The next one, the Ahmedabad textile mill, labor satyagraha, and also Kheda satyagraha. Here also Gandhiji was able to, solve the problems of the concerned parties. And through these satyagrahas, what he was able to do is that he instilled this feeling of self-reliance within the people, that if nobody will come and solve your problems, you have to solve your problems on your own. So this is what is self-reliance. Then because he was also able to, solve these issues, so it also led to self-confidence among Indians. Because till now Indians did not have any self-confidence that we could stand up to the oppressive rule of the British. So he taught the Indians to fight for their rights, and this is what he did during these struggles. Now after this, what happens is then another satyagraha starts, Rowlatt Act Satyagraha. Now Rowlatt Act was this satyagraha brought Gandhiji into active politics. Now this satyagraha was started after Rowlatt Act was passed in the year 1919. And this was a very draconian act, in the sense that it would give government draconian powers, very, very, scary powers like preventive detention. Right, so these were this Rowlatt Act gave very draconian powers to the British government, and it would lead to further repression of people in India. So according to Gandhiji, what Gandhiji described this act is, he said that it was a betrayal of trust and faith. This act, it leads to betrayal of trust and faith, and we have lost trust and faith in the British government. After this, what happens is that Gandhiji gave a call for a hartal or a strike against the British on 6th April 1919. So in this strike, there was massive participation by the Indians, and this strike was very, very popular. So official reports that were issued by the British during that time about this strike against the Rowlatt Act that was conducted by Gandhiji and his followers, the official reports of the British government, they highlight unprecedented fraternization between Hindus and Muslims. So the point is that Hindus and Muslims stood one against the common enemy, which was the British. So these were some of the movements that brought they started rise of Gandhi as a leader in India, and Rowlatt Act was basically the movement which brought Gandhiji in the active politics. Now, in this unit number 7, you will be reading about two movements, which are Khilafat and non-cooperation movement. Now, Khilafat movement and non-cooperation movement, if you see their nature, by their very nature, they were anti-imperialist movements under the leadership of Gandhiji. So their main aim was to stand against the British, because that was the common enemy. The Khilafat movement started because Turkey was defeated in First World War, and the British were planning to remove the Khalifa from power in Turkey, and which they did ultimately. So the British removed the Khalifa from power in Turkey, but within Indian Muslims there was a sentiment that they wanted to protect the institution of Khalifa, right? So they stood up against the British operation. So the aim from the Muslim leadership was to bring the pan-Islamic and Indian nationalist sentiment together. So they wanted to combine these two sentiments, pan-Islamic and also the Indian nationalist sentiment. So the British government was declared an enemy, and a popular movement started against them. So but at the same time, the success of Khilafat, it was felt that the movement, for the success of the movement, a need was felt to secure support from non-Muslims for the success of movement. So this is why Muslim leaders started to reach out to the Hindu leaders, and they said, we need to stand as one. And then this is how Khilafat and the non-cooperation movement, they were combined under the leadership of Gandhiji. So the two movements were anti-imperialist by their very nature. And in the words of Gandhiji, what he said is that in proper solution of the Mohammedan question lies the realization of Swaraj. This is what he had, a vision of Swaraj, but he said that the British also need to look at the issue of the sentiments of the Muslims. And during these movements, there was unprecedented Hindu-Muslim unity. And in June 1920, the non-cooperation movement was started. And what it included is three things. The first was the renunciation of the titles conferred by the government. Then the second was resignation from all kinds of government jobs. And third one was non-payment of taxes to the government. So these were all three parts of the non-cooperation movement. Ultimately, what happened is, because Gandhi's movements were based on the concept of non-violence, he used to be very, very disturbed whenever he would read a report about violence. And this is what also happened with the non-cooperation movement, that Gandhiji called off this cooperation movement after the Chauri Chaura incident in 1922. What happened during the Chauri Chaura incident is that a police station was set on fire by people, and some policemen died. So Gandhiji said that this is violence. There is no place for violence in my movement, and he called off the movement. Despite the fact that there were many leaders who did not want him to call off the movement at its peak of its popularity, but he did this. Gandhiji was then sent to 6 years in jail. Khilafat movement was, and with the due course of time, even Khilafat movement also declined. So what happened is, by these two movements, Gandhiji mobilized various sections of people, political, and he raised political and social consciousness among the people. And now the common people were integral part to the project of nationalism in India. So now we can move on to the last unit for today's discussion, which is the civil disobedience movement. Now, during this civil disobedience movement, it was launched by Gandhiji 8 years after of the non-cooperation movement. There was a big gap of 8 years. And during these 8 years, what was happening is that Congress and Gandhiji, they were focusing on social questions, social issues like communalism and untouchability. So they were trying to, unify people, and they were talking about, internal divisions had to be taken care of before you are united against a common enemy. So this is what Gandhiji was doing, that he was fighting, against the common problems of people like untouchability. Now, this civil disobedience movement, it was launched in 1930 to achieve Purna Swaraj. Complete independence was the motive of the civil disobedience movement. The viceroy of the time, Lord Irwin, he did not respond to Gandhiji's memorandum with 11 points. So Gandhiji had given 11 points to Lord Irwin, and he said that you should respond to my 11 points. These were various demands of the Indian leaders, but Lord Irwin did not respond, and this is why civil disobedience movement was launched in 1930. Now, another point that happened is that, at that time, to mobilize the masses, how do you mobilize people who have their own, common problem, their own peculiar problems? So Gandhiji chose salt tax to mobilize the masses, because salt is a very, very common problem. And the British had taxed salt, and salt is something which is, very, very basic to an, human survival. So Gandhiji even called it the only condiment of the poor. The only thing that brings taste for a poor in the food is salt. So if you tax salt, then you have broken the back of the poor. So Gandhiji chose salt to mobilize people, and it was a very big masterstroke, because it initially struck a chord with the masses. And then what Gandhiji did was that he reached Dandi, and he broke the salt law as an act of defiance against the British. And this image is very, very well known to Indians. This is, you see Gandhiji picking up salt in his hands and breaking the salt law. Now, after this, because this movement became very, very popular, the British tried to repress the movement through using force and coercion. And what they did is that they jailed all the senior Congress leaders, because if you jail the leaders, then who will guide the masses. So the British played by the playbook, and they jailed all the senior Congress leaders, who were later released in January 1931. And after being released, there was a pact between Gandhi and Lord Irwin that was signed in March 1931. But what happened is that after this pact, Gandhiji was invited for a second round table conference in London by the British, where he went. But what happened is this round table conference did not lead to anything, because the British divided, because all the invitees from India were invited by the British. They were not chosen by Indian leaders. So the British invited they had a divisive agenda, and they invited people based on, who were all divisive leaders were invited, so that there is no consensus reached in the roundtable conference. They succeeded because all the people who were participating from India were all talking about their own interest. They were not talking about the national interest. So Gandhi comes back empty-handed from the conference, and as he came back within a week, he was arrested on January 4, 1932. And then after his arrest, the civil disobedience movement was resumed in 1932. There was a total environment of total distrust towards the British government. Government was also ready to use maximum coercion. And what happened is, with the due course of time, again, this movement started to decline due to heavy repression by the British government. The movement was able to free the minds of Indians even before India became independent. And the social base of national movement expanded because there was participation in civil disobedience movement across India. People were mobilized to a big extent, and Gandhiji awakened the nation from its slumber. So what you find is that through these movements, Gandhiji mobilized the masses, he used mass media, and he was able to instill a feeling of self-confidence and self-reliance in India, and Indians were able to stand up behind him for their rights. Thank you very much.